Hello, we're live. You got it just in time.
Just caught you singing.
Yeah. Hi everyone. We're live. We're joined by Calm Biker, just in the nick of time.
Hello.
Hello, indeedy. Thanks for coming along, Richard.
No problem.
Oh, Suffolk Andy's just come on. You got to say that like that. It's the law.
Suffolk Andy.
Suffolk Andy. I'll ask him to join as well because he's a fairly seasoned rider. And that'll give us a panel total of 3, which we'll probably do for this one. Yeah, link. For those that have just tuned in, you've probably seen by the link that you joined that this one is about not so much safety, well it kind of is, but more about your pre-ride checks, which leads to safety, I suppose, and general maintenance, DIY stuff, you know, simple stuff, nothing too taxing, stuff that you should be able to do yourself, hence the name DIY. So I've sent Suffolk Andy a link as well, but what we'll crack off with, a lot of people asked for this, by the way, wanted to know about what sort of things you should check before you go out on a ride. So I thought the way we break it down is stuff that you would do probably every time before you go on your bike, and then we'll go on from there to, like, you know, weekly, then monthly, every half year, and every year. You know, I think that'll probably be a good format to go with. So, funny comment from someone on Skype there. Right, so let's start, as I always like to, because I'm always told that I speak too much. Richard, what do you normally do before you go for a ride with your bike?
Now this is difficult because I was quite late to find out what the hangout was about. Otherwise, I would have had my checklist, which I have stuck on my wall in the back cave, just to go through every time I take the bike out and every time I bring it back in, just so I don't forget anything. But the main ones, I have to be honest and say that I don't do everything every time. Sometimes you kind of can't be bothered, and I know you should, but yeah, you know what it's like. But the ones I always check every time, the main thing is tyres. Tyres and steering. So I will whack it on the centre stand, just run my hand around the tyre, feel for anything that shouldn't be there, check the tread, visual inspection, make sure there's nothing new. I mean, I've got the odd little hole in my tyres where I've gone over bits of flint and things like that, so if there's any bits still stuck in those holes, whip them out. And then I'll rock it back, do the same on the front wheel. Steering wise, just making sure I can steer left to right, full lock, nothing snagging, no cables snagging, anything like that. So they're the kind of two main things, because if anything's going to kill you, it's your steering or your tyres. And then, not quite as often as I should, but you know, every few rides out, I'll check all my indicators, check my headlight, check my tail light, check my brake light, horn. Tend not to check the horn if I'm going out at night because the neighbours might get upset. What else is there? Oil levels, brake fluid levels. Obviously I check my brakes every time I go out as well. That's there with the steering and the tyres. It's tricky on my bike. Oh, it's not tricky, but it's boring on my bike to check the rear brake fluid reservoir. Front one's easy, on the handlebars, look through the sight glass. Rear one I have to take panels off. So it's a bit of a pain because I have to get Allen keys out and start taking things to pieces. So that one don't get checked as much. So it's all those kind of things really. Lights, mirrors, steering, brakes, tyres. Anything that's got the potential of killing you unexpectedly gets checked every time. And anything that's got the chance of killing you because you don't see what's going on around you gets checked quite often as well. Did I say oil level?
Yeah, you did, mate. Sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot. You have to go further from right now.
It's just I've got 8 or 9 things on my checklist. Although the last one is actually for when I come back, and that's just a reminder for me to give the chain a quick inspection. Oh, chain tension. Give the chain a quick inspection and lube it up before I put the bike away.
Yeah.
I cheated. I didn't make the list myself. It's a list, and it's done in exactly the way that he suggested, laminated and stuck on the wall of Del Boy.
Oh yeah, Dale's Garage.
Yeah, he had a video on there of checklists, and it's just handy. I mean, obviously, when you're learning, you go through all these things and they tell you what to check, but it's easy to forget one or two, isn't it? So I did the checklist business.
Excellent. All right, mate. I'll take you off the hotspot.
That's all right. I'm just wondering if I've got my checklist on this computer. I'll try and find it while you interrogate Andy. Hi, Andy, by the way.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for joining,
mate. Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm glad you joined, mate, because you're a seasoned rider. And the subject, I'm guessing you know, is about stuff that you do before you ride your bike, you like pre-ride maintenance and checks and things.
Okay.
And Andy's just been put on the hotspot there. Sorry, Andy? Oh, blimey. You know, except now Richard's been put on the hotspot with going through his checklist. I just wondered, subject Andy, because it is the law to say it that way. What sort of things do you do before you go for a run on your bikes? What sort of checks?
I think I'm a typical biker that I'm very sort of lazy, and I don't have a checklist or anything like that. But you know, I'll get on my bike and I'll make sure that the first thing I do is if I take off, I make sure the brakes are working. I'll give them a little pull, see if they're fine, get my mirrors in line and stuff like that. But as for checking all the bike out, look, I've got to confess, I'm a lazy biker. I don't check the oil and stuff like that. I might have a look at the chain, make sure that's fine. Like I say, that's it really. I do not check my bike that well. It's, you know, I've never had a problem with not checking it, but I always try those brakes because that would be the one thing that would worry me if I went off and there was no brakes, you know what I mean? So they're always checked, mirrors, and really, I've got to confess, I am not one of these, you know, like I'm in an air pilot checking all the things down. I don't do it.
Yeah.
Just who I am, you know.
Yeah, I understand. I know what it's like, mate. You've been riding a long time. You sort of, you kind of know your bike. You're a bit more confident about where it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And like I say, I always do. As I go off, I just, you know, check the brakes, make sure they're right. I know the feel of the bike as soon as I get on it. You know, if I don't, I do check tyres now and then. Not very often, but sometimes if the back one's up on the stand, I'll spin it, have a look, see if it's okay, and just have a look around the front. I think that's the main thing: is your tyres, brakes, you know.
Yeah.
And they're the main things. Yeah.
Brilliant.
On my list.
Yeah. Just before we go to your list, mate, I just want to quickly address some of the comments and well, I don't think I've got any questions yet, but just quickly say hi to everyone that's tuned in, and thanks for tuning in, guys. So in no particular order, because you know what Google Plus is like. Tom Vilby, hi, mate, thanks for tuning in. We've also got good old Bex. Hey, Bex. Thanks for tuning in, our regular viewer. Bex, one day you've got to come on here. You know that, don't you? It's the law. So thanks for tuning in as well, Bex. Got Big Kev, g'day.
Well, okay.
Thanks for tuning in, all the way from Australia. Ratus Manus, hello as well, dude. Good evening. And here we go, good old Devon Mellon. Hi, Devon Mellon. He likes the topic today. Good, mate. There was a lot of people asked for this one, so I thought it'd be well worth doing. And also, we've got a good hello there from my UK #1.
Dave.
That's a law as well. Right, yeah, so thanks for tuning in. I've just cleared down the questions. Now, if anyone's watching and wants to ask a question, please feel free. Best way to do it is by, if you're not in Google Plus already, then on the left-hand side at the bottom of the video, you should have a little link to go and join the Hangout area where there is a questions tool that you can go and ask questions live, and we'll happily answer those questions if you've got any. And a quick hello as well there to Steve. Hello, Steve, mate. Thanks for tuning in. And good to see you, mate. Right, so let's go back to our pre-ride checks then. And Calm Biker has got his back cave maintenance checklist. Do you want to run us through it then, Richard?
Yeah, most of them I remembered. I don't know if you can see this on the screen or not, but the night before stuff is really the after riding, while everything's still warm. So remove salties because it always seems to be salty around here. Although most of my riding has been winter riding, so that's just on there to get rid of the horrible stuff. Lube the chain tension tech, mentioned them already. And then before riding, tyre pressures, visual check, fork seals I didn't mention. Just have a quick look, make sure nothing's leaky, nothing's damp. And bolt check. I'll come back to it in a minute. Bulb check, horn check, oil check, brake fluid. Talked about all those already. The bolt check, again, it's a Del Boy tip. I've pinched off Mrs. C a little bottle of blue nail polish, and all the important bolts got a dab of nail polish on the bolt and on the frame or piece of metal next to them. So it's just I say 2 minutes, not even 2 minutes, it's 30 seconds just to look at the bolts and make sure the 2 dabs of nail polish still line up.
Yeah. Yeah, the important ones being wheels, steering, and swing arm. About the ones you really want to worry about.
Yep.
Okay, and we've got a question coming as well. I'll just quickly, I don't think I've got a lot to add to what everyone else already said, really, in terms of like a daily check. Let's just take a focus off. Yeah, pretty much what everyone else has said.
Right. See you later.
Andy. Yeah, but just quickly go through. I think everyone said most of it really. Check brakes, check them, check they work. I mean, that's the first thing I always do once I've got the bike out of the garage. When we're talking in terms of getting the bike out, there's 2 kind of maintenance bits that I do. Let's start with when I park the bike up because then it will make sense. When I park the bike up, it goes on paddock stands, and then what that allows me to do is to clean the chain and lube it back up. And it also allows me to check the tyres while it's up there, because whilst I'm spinning the back tyre around doing the rear chain, as if there's any other, it allows me to check the rear tyre, make sure there's no nails or anything in it like that, check the wear's okay, and the same for the front, just spin that round and check there's nothing sticking in it, and wear as well. And then that's the bike chain and tyre check done already, and obviously the tension as well while you're lubing the chain, all that's kind of part and parcel. And then in the morning, off the paddock stands, wheel it outside, make sure the mirrors are adjusted, and then obviously just check the brakes all work, put it into gear, run it, everything's good. And as Calm Biker mentioned there as well about the steering, what I like to do as well is I like to check the steering while the engine's running, just to make sure there's no cables getting caught or anything. So when you go lock to lock, if the engine speed picks up on full lock one way or the other, then that means that your throttle tension for some reason has got off skew width, if you like, or it's being pulled somewhere. So either the cable needs lubrication, or you just need to check that your cable's not catching anywhere. But 9 times out of 10, as Suffolk Andy says, well, it's all good, you know your bike. But those are the sorts of things that I would normally check. Obviously your brakes before you start shifting, if anywhere, check they're okay. And again, when you're doing your chain lube and your front tyre check, it's always good to just check your pads are looking okay. The thing is, once you've done that, you know that there's probably there's another 1,000 miles on those pads, so that you don't have to check it every single time. But just remember to have a little glance, make sure everything looks good. And then of course your lights, especially brake lights. I always check my brake lights, front and back, make sure they work, because I want to know that people can know that I'm stopping. Because being rear-ended on the bike isn't nice. And your fluid levels, my fluid levels, the clutch, I've got hydraulic clutch, so hydraulic fluid and brake fluid on the front, check that, and the same for Calm Biker, mine's hidden away under panels for the rear brake, but then again, check it every other week, when you're doing your general clean down, and it's all good. And the other kind of thing as well, if you have been riding in dirty weather, again, as Calm Biker says, give your bike a wash, clean it down, get rid of all the road shit and dirt and salt, and then that helps them for you getting to the last part where you clean your chain and lube it back up. So that covers that. Now before we go on to sort of more longer term maintenance over, something you might do once a week, and then once a month, whatever, I've got some questions coming in. So let's just take Tom's question quickly. So he says, any advice on the maintenance of brake discs? notice that's discs, not pads. Now, does any of the panel want to take this one first?
I've just changed mine on my Virago because I had a problem with it. This sort of clicker noise, and I went for everything that was sort of not disc first, pads, cleaned out the brakes and everything else, but it still kept going. So in the end, I had to put a new set on, and I think that is important. I knew from the start that it was probably what it was, but because that was such an expensive item, I tried to see if it wasn't that, but that was that. So it's very important that they are true. And I'll tell you what, when I took the one that was warped off my bike, and I actually laid it on a flat surface, the actual tolerance of how much it was out was, well, it was a Rizzler, if you know what I mean. It wasn't even that. You couldn't hardly get a Rizzler paper under it. That was enough to put it out, and it's very important that those are true. And I'll tell you what, when they're not true, you'll know, because I've got this slightly little noise, but when you pull up your brake, you'll get like a jogging effect, where it's sort of clamping and unclamping, and that can be a bit, you know, a bit worrying. So always make sure they're true, or make sure that they're working properly, because that's very important.
Yeah, and something you can pick up if you do the front tyre check. Mine goes up on pallet stand, so I can get the front wheel off the ground as well. And when I'm spinning that front wheel around to check the tyre, also give it a spin, and if it keeps locking in the same position, or rubbing quite heavily, then you want to check again on your discs. Now, the thing is, there's two different types of discs as well. Carm, did you want to add anything to the...
I mean, I only do two things, or rather, I do one thing and I check one thing, because I've never actually had to do the job. But the thing I do is probably every couple of weeks, maybe a little bit more often, I'll get a bit of brake disc cleaner out and just give them a wipe over. It's amazing how much crud will come off a brake disc. And aside from that, I've got floating discs, so I will check the little bobbins or whatever you call them, just to make sure they're still moving happily. And I'm reliably informed that if they're not, you can free them up by sticking a nut and bolt through them and just twisting them around with a ratchet.
Yeah.
You can.
But I haven't actually had to do that yet.
Right. Yeah, I do that on mine. Mine's got floating disc as well. I think most bikes now are floating disc. Any decent bike or set of brakes on them. And the idea of the floating disc is it allows it to move a little bit and stay true with the brake pad, so that the warp disc isn't quite as bad an issue, but it's still an issue.
With the Virago, it's a solid disc. It's not floating.
Right.
And that was why it got so bad, because there's no tolerance there at all. So, like you say, with the floating ones, you can, like Richard said, you can spin your discs and whatever. You can do so much more with them than you can with the solid, old-fashioned 1980 bikes, you know.
Yeah.
I think if you hit your bobbins with a whole bunch of brake disc cleaner, it's probably going to keep them freer for longer. But obviously on a solid one, you've got nothing you can do, have you?
Well, on a solid disc, you're stuck with that. What a disc is a disc is a disc. If it's warped, that's the end of that disc. And they're not cheap.
What I done with mine is, when I actually screwed them back into the wheel, because they're solid, I actually put a little dab of copper grease on the threads and put them in, and then tightened them up. And I do that as well when I take the actual whole brake caliper off, and when I screw it back on, the two screws, I always put a little bit of copper grease on the threads, just a little tiny bit, and thread them back in, and that makes them a lot easier.
Yeah. And in terms of maintaining your bobbins, if you have got a floating disc, I like to do mine about every 2 weeks. And all it requires, or the way that I do it, is I use a wing nut type bolt with two big washers at each end, and a posi drive other end, if you know what I mean. So we're talking like a posi drive bolt with a wing nut. It's just easier to put on and off when you're doing all your bobbins, because you've got loads of them. And then what I do is I'll use my electric screwdriver, and I'll wing nut it up tight, spray it with lots of brake cleaner, and then get the drill on it and just spin it both ways, left and right. It's a really quick way of doing it. You can use a ratchet, but it's, you know, rather than doing that, just get the drill on it and just quickly go around, and it's a lot faster. And it does.
That's it as exercise.
Yeah, well, you know, but yeah, I prefer to use, whenever I can, I use the electric drill to speed up that sort of process, because, you know, when you've got a lot of floating bobbins to do, it takes a while. And that's my quickest method, is a wing nut and 2 big washers either end, pinch onto the actual bobbin itself, and then you spin it round with a drill, and that way it gets it nice and clean quickly. So that would be my advice to the maintenance of the discs, and as Calm said there, some brake cleaner on the disc, you know, every week, every 2 weeks or whatever, maybe when you do your bobbins, and just get any quill off of that as well. Doesn't hurt. Don't use anything other than brake cleaner. Don't put WD-40 on or anything like that, if anyone mentions it. So yeah, thanks for that question, Tom. Hope that helps. And if we haven't answered your question, obviously come back, let us know. And a little comment as well from Who Am I UK number 1, who says, happy you did not ask me in this one. My bike fell its MOT on a warped front disc. So there we go. So that's, I take it you have to buy some more, new discs, I take it, Dave. And they're not cheap, are they? I don't know how much they are on yours, but in my experience, discs aren't the cheapest things to replace.
No, very expensive.
And you have to think about doing it in pairs if you've got twin front discs as well. I would, personally, if I was going to do it. Then you've got discs of equal width and wear. But there we go. So that answers those questions. Thanks for those questions, guys. If anyone's watching and wants to ask a question, please do. Go to Google+, go to the Hangout, and you can ask a question live via the tool. So we've talked about maintenance that you'll probably do before you ride, or maintenance that you might do as soon as you park the bike up, like doing the chain and lubing it up and checking the tension. Now then, one other thing I'll say, I mentioned on chain actually while we're at it. When you spin the wheel around and you're checking for the tension, you'll tend to find there'll be a tighter spot in the chain, and that's the point where you adjust to. So as you're moving your chain around, check the where are we? Here. Right. So check your tension. It's about you're talking about ½ an inch to an inch of play there, depending on your bike and how long the chain is and everything else, from the sprocket to the rear sprocket. You'll know what the normal tension is anyway. And as you go around, you'll find one point where it's its tightest spot, and that should be the point where you adjust to, where you do your inch, inch and a half, depending on the bike. And then wherever it's looser, that's the way it is. And if you're getting lots of tight spots, then you may want to consider changing your chain. Okay, so in terms of, let's go for, one other maintenance. Let's go on to weekly maintenance. Let's do weekly maintenance. Stuff like Andy, do you do anything in addition to what we've already discussed about, or focus on anything more often once a week?
I've got, yeah, the thing that, if I have to say that sort of is my bugbear is chains. I don't know why I've got this thing about chains. Like, I've just come back off a bike. I've just got off it, what, I don't know, 30 minutes ago. And I put it in the garage, and the first thing I look at is a chain. And I thought, yeah, I've got to clean that this weekend, so I'm going to clean it all up, and the sprocket and everything, and redo it. So chain is my big thing, you know. But I always do check those brake levels and fluid levels weekly. I'm quite a lazy bugger, I can't help that, but there's certain little things that I will check, and one is tyre pressures as well, because if you go under your tyre pressures, you know, you want a nice sort of tyre shape, and if you know, don't get the right tyre pressures, it's not just going to use you more petrol, but it's going to put your tyre out of shape as well, and you'll get the flat spot. So just generally looking around those bits, you know. I think Richard has sort of got his list there, and that's more like my weekly, monthly list than daily list, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, tyre pressures, I'll pick up on that straight away on tyre pressures. It's very important. If I let my tyre pressures go, mine are 42 pounds per square inch on my bike.
Yeah.
And if I let them get under pressured, then my bike does not handle as well. And cornering is not as pleasant. So it really is important that you keep your tyre pressures on the nose, because as Andy says, it keeps the tyre the right shape and gives you the right contact patch and the right feel. If your tyres get lower on pressure, then handling won't be as good, especially corners and braking and things like that. It won't feel as good, and therefore it's not as safe. So tyre pressure is important. Richard, anything you want to add on a weekly check that you haven't already mentioned, or something you might focus on?
Well, I'll say when I get in every night, I'll lube the chain. On a weekly basis, I'll get to it. Well, I've got a tool to do it now, but I used to get to it with a toothbrush. But I'll give it a proper clean back so it's bare metal and it looks brand new. Then re-lube it again. I'll get the panels off and I'll check the rear brake fluid, check the coolant, and then just a visual inspection of everything while I've got the panels off, really, make sure there's no leaks or anything like that. Might put a bit of grease in places that could do with a bit of grease. But apart from that, I can't think of a lot. I check the free play on the clutch and the brake, that kind of thing. For that one, my checklist is the manual that came with the bike that I just run through that, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I might do now from time to time is, again, when I'm checking the brakes and the clutch, if you've got adjustable levers, if you're finding, something's getting a bit close to the bar, like on your front brake especially, if you've not got much left before you hit the bar with the lever, you might want to consider adjusting that, because if you hit the bar, you can't pull the brake on any further. So always make sure you've got about a good ½ an inch before the bar with you on full lock, giving it a proper grab, in terms of your front brake especially. And again, with the rear brake, make sure that's adjusted properly. You don't want to be sort of half braking your ankle trying to get full power on the rear brake. Always keep them nicely adjusted too. Yeah, I've not really got anything to add. Again, we talked about the forks. Check your forks. Check there's no oil leaking from your forks, and all your fluid levels. Makes sense. I think that's really it on a kind of weekly basis. We've already covered most of the stuff now. One of the things that I do that no one's mentioned yet as well is that I will always put the bike on a trickle charge every week. Just to make sure that battery's in tip-top condition, especially if you've got a big motor, like mine's a 1300 for example, and it does take a bit of oomph, and it only starts properly when the battery's in tip-top condition. As soon as the battery starts degrading, you're going to have more issues trying to start the bike, and the slower the turnover speed, the less likely it's going to start, the more drain on the battery, and then you end up going out buying a new battery. So I always trickle charge every week, sometimes twice a week, depending on, especially if I know I'm going to go out the next day on a long ride, like when I went to the Lincoln ride, for example. It was on trickle charge all night, so that I knew I had a good fully charged battery for the whole day and I wasn't going to have any issues. So yeah, that's weekly. What about monthly, guys? Do you do anything, sort of a major check over the course of a month?
I think like most bikers, we tinkle more with motorbikes than we do with cars. There's no doubt about that. And I've got my 2 bikes in the garage, and I'll go out there and I'll roll them out, and I'll just have a play with them. And that play is checking everything and having a look and clean. And if you keep your bike clean and you're checking everything as you're doing it, you shouldn't have any problems. It's just taking a bit of time to look after that machine. Because if you look after that machine will look after you, and that's just a case of just checking all these things that Richard and yourself have said,
Yeah.
Just good maintenance,
Yeah. Okay.
The only other thing I would add is probably once a month is give it a wash. And as daft as as daft as it sounds, you'll find a lot from washing it, because you'll spot anything that's different to last time you washed it. And then I'll tend to, because of where I live, I'll tend to wash it and then ACF 50 it.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Washing it is a time when you should be getting really close. I mean, it depends how much you love your bike. I mean, when I wash my bike, once it's cleaned, I then get really up close and go over it with a fine tooth comb and clean all the nooks and crannies, because I like it to look and keep it looking good. So you'll find lots of things there if anything's gone awry, especially like leaks from your fork seals, or brake fluid, if that's leaking anywhere, you'll spot that a mile off. So what I'll do now, so I think we've kind of covered all the maintenance stuff now, so what I'm going to go on from there is basic DIY, because that gives us 15 minutes to talk about some of the things that you might want to do once a year. But before I do that though, Big Kev's asked a question. Do you lube the clutch and brake cables?
Yes.
There we go. Andy says yes.
Yes. Yeah, I've just done mine. You can get a little thing off eBay, I don't know what they call it, but it's a fantastic little bit of kit where you put the end of the cable in, and you get your WD-40 and your squirter, and you squirt it, and that will just shoot it right down the cable. Bob's are good, jobs are done, and you ain't got to worry for a while. But yeah, I do it.
And I'm in a different situation with me clutch and brake because it's all hydraulic, so they're already lubed, if you like. But in terms of throttle, though, I do exactly the same as stuff that Andy just said. Both all the throttle cables. There's quite a few on Hayabusa. They all get cleaned in the same way. And Carbiker, I take it you do a similar thing, or have you not got to that point yet?
Well, I've not got to that point. I mean, I'm interested to know how often do you do that? My bike's only kind of 7 months old.
I'd say at least it's time to do it then, really, especially if you've been riding all the muck. And it doesn't hurt. All it does is it just keeps your cables nice and easy moving through the sleeve, yeah. So it wouldn't hurt at all just to give it a clean out. It gets all the muck out that might have gathered up inside. So yeah, that's something on your list then.
And you'll be surprised how underneath your actual throttle grip, underneath there sometimes can get dry as well. That can actually stop your throttle from going back on itself. And I had that actually about 6 months ago, and I had to sort that out as well to get it so. You don't want to be on a bike that the throttle you're pushing back yourself. You want it to flick back itself. And I had a problem where my bike was not flicking back on itself, and I didn't like it. So as soon as I got it back, sorted it out, got it to flick back, jobs are good.
Yeah, I think my bike's got a return cable as well, so it helps that if the throttle ever did stick, I've got another cable that pulls it shut as well when I twist it forwards, but not all bikes are like that, so it's always good to keep your brake cables and your throttle cables and all that. Absolutely. And I do it on mine, even though mine's got that, both way kind of throttle cable, still keeping them lubed up is great. And you get that nice feeling on the throttle as well, because it's nice and free moving and nice and controllable. Okay, good question, Kev. Thanks for that. So that just leaves me one last thing then, which is what you would do in terms of maintenance that you can do yourself once a year. Now we've got 10 minutes, so try not to take too long because I'm Andy. But what sort of stuff do you do to your bike once a year? If you want to say twice a year, then every 2 years, then fine. But if you can sort of combine it, what do you?
I do all of my own maintenance. I don't, unless it's a specialised job. I will take to a garage, but electrical. I've just never been able to get my head around electrical stuff on the bike. I must admit. Everything else, I'll have a go myself. I didn't used to, and then I realised that it's best to it makes it more pleasurable to be able to do stuff. And there's not many jobs now that I won't actually tackle. I've got one to do on one of my bikes, my old 32-year-old bike. I've got a fork seal gone. I looked to see it the other day. I don't ride the bike, but I've got one gone. And I thought...
Yeah, you're breaking up there, buddy.
I've watched a couple of videos on YouTube. Yeah, and I'm going to have a go. But all the servicing, everything else, I do myself. It gives you pleasure if you can do it. You don't have to be a mechanic, to be... They're usually sensible things, and if they're a little bit complicated, go on YouTube. There's loads of guys on there who's going to show you how to do it, and that's how I do it. And if I do a job and I'm taking something apart with our mobile phones now, I take a picture of every bit as I do it. So if I do get a bit mixed up, I know exactly how it's all going to go back together. That's how I do it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Cheers, Andy. And Richard.
Well, mine's
difficult, but...
Say again, sorry?
not had the bike here yet, but you
No,
know.
that's right. I mean, mine's pretty limited because the bike's still under warranty, so there's only a certain amount that I would do. If there's anything went wrong with it, then I'd let them fix it rather than me, because it wouldn't cost me anything. So the only thing really that I've done is 3,000 miles I did oil and filter, which was remarkably simple. I ended up, my one tip that I said to you earlier about is tighten your oil filter up by hand. Don't rely on a torque wrench that may well be broken.
Yeah, don't wrench on it.
But, you know, why not do it yourself? It technically, according to the manual, it doesn't need doing, but it was the halfway point before the actual service that the shop will be doing because of the warranty. I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a whirl. You know, I suspect most of these jobs are pretty easy as long as you've got the right information, and as you say, as Andy says, you know, the information's out there on the internet, so why not? And you get to learn more about your bike at the same time.
Absolutely. And a lot of it as well can be translated from bike to bike in terms of like videos on YouTube. But one other thing I would suggest, and I'll just get onto exactly what I do. But if it's a bike that you can't find on the internet, but you think you got a good idea, then do it. But why don't you film it? Why don't you put that video on YouTube, the one for your bike? You know, because you can refer back to that film when you took it apart to put it back together as well. So it's all good. And you'll also put a video out there for everyone else that they can learn from. So there we go. But in terms of what you should actually do, or what I do, is I do, sorry, phone call come in. What I do is I do my oil every year, oil and filter. I do my coolant every year. I do my brake fluid every year. Brake fluid's only good for 2 years anyway, so why not do it every year? You know, no harm, is it? It's my bike. You know, some people, if they're not worried about it, then you know they don't and they'll leave it. But don't leave it more than 2 years, of course, because your brake fluid will become too infested with water, basically, and it's not as effective. But yeah, I love my bike. It keeps me safe, so I'm going to give it the best treatment possible. So it gets clean oil and filter every year. I'll get a new chain on it every year. That might sound excessive, but you know, why not? A chain is for my bike is 100 quid with sprocket, and it gets a full set of new chain and sprockets. And it's just because I want it to have the best on my bike. And so that's all your fluids done. The only thing that I don't really play around with is the fork oil, because it's kind of what it is really, and there shouldn't really be any need to mess with that. Not for at least a good five years before you want to start playing with that. Have I missed anything, Andy, in terms of what we actually do? Oh, air filter. I've just quickly mentioned air filter. The reason I haven't mentioned it is because I've put a K&N in, which is the washable ones, the ones that are reusable. There are other makes available, but I've got a K&N in mine, and you don't need to reuse those. You just wash them. And I think that's it.
There's one more that's on my list. I haven't done it yet. Is getting the brake calipers off and cleaning the pistons. Do you do that? There's a laugh there. There's an annoying laugh. So go on.
You know why you said that? Because it's on my list to do for my bike.
Is it?
Yeah, funny enough.
I didn't know that. I've known that one because I've seen quite a few videos of people doing it on the YouTube.
Yes, no, I'll be doing that. I'll be doing that very shortly. Actually, it's just getting to the point. I've just been a bit short of money. Payday at the end of this month. I'll be getting new tyres, and whilst the tyres are off and I'm getting new tyres, I'll be doing the brakes and putting my new hoses on as well.
So we expected a video for that then?
Yes, there will be a video for that.
Marvellous.
Excellent. There'll also be a burnout video when it comes. How to do a burnout video before I put my tyres. Well, that's been asked for as well, so I'll do that. Okay, there's a few questions that I'm going to quickly tackle, and then it's time to end this session because we're going to finish at 1:45, which gives everyone a 15-minute break before the 9 o'clock session, rather than clambering to get another one. I've kind of brainwave thought, why not do the 15-minute break before 9 hours? So let's quickly go for these. So just quickly pick up on Steve's question. Would you lube the choke? I take it you mean as in the choke cable, if you've got a choke cable. And the same goes, I think, for any cables, is give them a lube. Because I don't think you would lube the choke as in terms of the butterflies on the carburetor, if that's where you're going with that. I'm pretty sure you mean cables, so yes, I would lube those. Anyone want to add anything to that one, or I'll move on to Kev?
I've not got a choke.
Right.
I've got a manual choke on mine, but yes, I do lube it now and then, just to keep it sort of going right. Yeah, no problem with that.
It's good you picked that, because I've got a fast idle on my Hayabusa, so that's a cable, and I lube that as well. All cables, lube them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's take this last question then from Big Kev. Now I know Big Kev's got a rather expensive oil filter that he has to buy whenever he does an oil change, but he says oil change every 5,000 kilometers instead of every 1,000 ? Irrespective, I change every year, Kev, because it's my bike. But if you're on a tight budget, then yeah. How much is like your bike? I mean, if you want to go to the manufacturer's specification and make that oil get as dirty as it possibly can before you change it, and you're happy with that, and that's fine, that's good, then fine. My bike's quite old now, and I want to make sure it stays in tip-top form. So I'm just a little bit overly loving of my bike, and therefore. How much is oil? An oil change on my bike costs me £40 for decent oil and a K&N oil filter, fast flow oil filter. £40, that's nothing. So why not do it every year? That's actually about the cost of 2 tanks of petrol. Not even that. So yeah, it's worth it, innit? It's your engine. It's the heart of your bike. Okay. And Steve's just come back and said yes, the cable for the choke. Yeah, any cables, Steve. Yeah, any cables on your bike, leave them up. Keep them free flowing, especially if you've had a lot of, or you've ridden your bike through a lot of dirty weather. Things can, as Suffolk Andy said, that they dry out, and that's when they start sticking, and then they start collecting stuff. And when you've got something dry stuff trying to attach to it, and it causes blockages, keep them, leave them up. Absolutely. Right, that brings...
If you go back to your oil thing, it might sound a bit unscientific, but if you want to check the oil has still got any sort of goodness in it, if you put your thumb and forefinger in some oil and you slowly pull it apart, if the oil makes a little bridge between your 2 fingers, that oil is still fine. But if you pull your fingers apart and it just instantly breaks, that oil is finished. And if it actually smells like a burnt smell, it's finished too. So that's a little bit. And I got that the other week actually from a mechanic at a service place, and he just was telling me how they check the oil. And that's just between your 2 fingers. I'm not seeing scientific, but it's the way.
Yeah. Absolutely, and yeah, if it's gone really off colour or if it smells burnt, then it probably is well gone. But like I say, I don't ever let my bike get to that point. I wouldn't ever let it dream of it. End of the lifetime of the oil. But there we go. So if you get a second-hand bike and you've just got it, change oil straight away, regardless of what the person tells you. I would, absolutely. And lube everything, check everything like it needed a full service, regardless of what they've told you. Trust me. You'd be surprised what I found on my Hayabusa that just had a service before I bought it. It hadn't been serviced, basically. But anyway, let's leave it there. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for the questions. And I'll just get Calm Biker, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
And Suffolk Andy.
Goodbye, folks.
Excellent. Many thanks for coming on, guys. Many thanks for watching, everyone. We're back here next week, same time, 8 o'clock, and we'll be going on to the Fully Loaded Hangout at 9 o'clock, where we can ask questions about anything. And if you want to join the panel, you just need to find me on Skype, search for Brain Dump, and I'll send you the link. Just let me know who you are. Excellent. Right, so from everyone here, just like to say thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to ride safe, ride invisible. Right. Stop the broadcast. It's trying to stop. I'm still